Money is more than paper. It's power, trust, and the invisible thread that ties nations together. And no currency on earth has defined that truth more than the American dollar. For nearly a century, the dollar has been the bloodstream of the global economy, the medium through which oil is sold, debts are settled, and empires measure their strength. But the story of how it became this global ruler is not one of chance. It's a story of wars, gold, oil, politics, and above all, trust. The tale begins in the ashes of World War II. Europe was devastated, Asia was rebuilding, and the United States stood untouched, with 2/3 of the world's gold reserves locked in its vaults. The Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 sealed the deal. The world's currencies would be tied to the dollar, and the dollar would be tied to gold. At that moment, the dollar wasn't just money. It became the world's anchor. If you trusted the dollar, you trusted the United States, and for decades, that trust seemed unbreakable. But then came 1971. President Richard Nixon looked at America's mounting debts and foreign gold demands and made a decision that would change everything. He closed the gold window, ending the dollar's direct link to gold. The system collapsed overnight. And yet, the dollar didn't. It should have fallen. It should have lost its crown. But instead, something strange happened. The world kept using it. Oil continued to be priced in dollars. Trade continued to flow through American banks. And the rest of the world realized something profound. They didn't need gold to trust the dollar anymore. They needed stability. And America, despite its flaws, offered it. The 1980s cemented the dollar's dominance. The rise of global finance, Wall Street, and multinational corporations all spoke one language, USD. By the 1990s, nearly 80% of global trade was invoiced in dollars. The dollar became not just a currency, but a habit, a reflex, a system too large to change. But every empire has its cracks. And those cracks are now starting to show. Today, countries like China, Russia, and even US allies are questioning whether the world should depend so heavily on a single nation's currency. The sanctions against Russia after 2022, the freezing of bank reserves, and the use of the dollar as a geopolitical weapon have sent a clear message: if you cross Washington, your money may not be yours anymore. That realization sparked a movement. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, began discussing alternatives. China pushed for the yuan in international trade. Russia started pricing oil in rubles. Even Saudi Arabia, long tied to the petrodollar, has flirted with the idea of accepting other currencies. The question is no longer if the world will diversify, it's how fast. Yet, for all the headlines about de-dollarization, the truth is more complicated. The dollar remains the world's safe haven. When chaos erupts, from wars to recessions, investors still run to it. Because the dollar isn't just backed by America's economy. It's backed by its institutions, its transparency, its legal system, and yes, its military. Think of it as a global psychological contract. The world trusts the dollar because it trusts the system behind it. But trust is fragile. It takes decades to build and moments to shatter. And for the first time since World War II, that trust is being tested. The United States is more indebted than ever before, over $34 trillion. Its political polarization deepens each year. Interest rates climb, inflation bites, and yet, the printing presses never seem to stop. Abroad, nations are quietly building lifeboats, currency swaps, gold purchases, digital currencies. China, in particular, sees the future differently. With its Belt and Road Initiative, it's weaving a web of influence across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and pushing trade in yuan. In 2010, the yuan accounted for less than 1% of global transactions. By 2025, that number has grown steadily, still small but symbolic. And symbolism matters. Because the real threat to the dollar is not another currency. It's time. The same way Rome's denarius once ruled trade before being diluted, every empire's money eventually faces erosion, not through defeat, but through evolution. The question is, what replaces it? Some argue that gold will return. Others believe in cryptocurrencies, orderless, decentralized, and immune to government control. Central banks, however, have their own idea: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, programmable money that could reshape everything we know about finance. But here's the irony. The more the world seeks to move away from the dollar, the more it reveals how deeply dependent it still is. Global debt is denominated in dollars. Most reserves are stored in dollars. The world's largest corporations, from Apple to ExxonMobil, still count profits in dollars. In essence, to leave the dollar is to rebuild the world from scratch. And no one is quite ready for that. Yet history has a way of surprising us. The British pound once seemed eternal. The Dutch guilder before it. The Spanish silver real before that. Each currency, in its time, was too big to fail. Until it did. So perhaps the dollar will one day fade, not through collapse, but through quiet replacement. A slow drift rather than a sudden fall. The world won't wake up one morning and find a new global currency. It will wake up one decade and realize the dollar isn't the only one. For now, the greenback still reigns supreme. But its crown feels heavier than ever. The world has learned to depend on a single heartbeat, and that heartbeat belongs to a country facing its own storms. So when we ask, why does the US dollar still rule the world? The answer is simple. Because we still believe in it. And when we ask, why might it not forever? The answer is even simpler. Because belief can change.